Welcome to our podcast, where we dive deep into the fascinating world of empires that rose to great heights and then fell. Today, we're focusing on the story surrounding the downfall of Constantine's dynasty. It's a tale of ambition, family, and ultimately, collapse. Constantine the Great had a vision for a stable and powerful empire led by his sons, but things didn't quite go as planned.
The stakes couldn't be higher. As power slips from the dynasty's hands, betrayal runs deep within the family. The brothers, once united under their father's rule, now find themselves locked in a fierce civil war. It's a story of ambition versus loyalty, where every decision can lead to glory or doom. Join us as we unravel the threads of treachery and conflict that mark the turbulent aftermath of Constantine the Great's reign.
As we look back at the accomplishments of Constantine the Great, it's clear that his leadership left a deep mark on the empire. He not only unified the Roman Empire after years of strife, but also transformed its religious landscape by embracing Christianity as the state religion. Constantine's vision was grand, hoping to build a stable dynasty that his sons could continue. His reign brought about peace and order that had been hard to find before.
However, the contrast between Constantine's rule and that of his son's epoch is stark. Initially, when his sons took over power, they found themselves in a position of respect because of their father's strong leadership. There was a time when their rule was undisputed and viewed as legitimate. But soon, things began to unravel. The tension that lay beneath the surface started to show, setting the stage for future discord and conflicts.
It's quite fascinating to consider how Constantine's accomplishments laid a foundation that should have guaranteed peace. He had not only secured the empire, but also influenced a generational shift towards Christianity. However, despite this strong base, the transition of power to his sons wasn't as smooth as expected. His hopes for his sons to carry on his legacy of unity and strength did not unfold according to his plan.
Indeed, despite the esteem and legitimacy his sons initially enjoyed, they couldn't sustain the empire's stability for long. Constantine intended for them to co-rule, thinking this would strengthen their unity. But soon, rifts began to appear. The initial acceptance they experienced eventually gave way to cracks within the leadership, sowing seeds of internal rivalry and setting the course for conflicts that would challenge the empire's future.
Let's dive into the early days of Constantine's sons taking over the rule of the Roman Empire. This period wasn't as stable as Constantine had hoped. His sons, trying to establish their power, were quick to see enemies everywhere, including within their own family. They began purging anyone they saw as a threat. This included close relatives, which sowed seeds of distrust right away. The atmosphere became tense, and you could feel the unease growing.
Absolutely. The sense of family instability was palpable, and it didn't take long for those tensions to escalate. Civil war was looming, particularly over the western provinces where Constantine's sons couldn't see eye to eye. Each brother had different ideas and ambitions, which only added fuel to the fire. They were supposed to help each other, but instead, their rivalries led them on diverging paths. This fractured alliance really marked the beginning of deeper conflicts.
As these tensions mounted, it came down to outright conflict. The civil war erupted, with each brother wanting to assert control over parts of the empire. The focus was especially on the western provinces, which were rich and strategically vital. The sons of Constantine found themselves at odds over these territories, each seeing a different vision for the future. Unfortunately, these internal conflicts weakened their collective strength and set the stage for upcoming battles.
The Civil War did more than just split the family. It showcased the extent to which their interests had become completely at odds. The first major battle between the brothers was significant. It wasn't just a clash over land or power, but an indication of how far apart they had grown. The once unified family under Constantine was now fractured beyond repair, setting the stage for many more struggles that were to come.
As the brothers warred over control, key battles defined this turbulent period. Constantine that faced a harsh end when trying to seize control from his siblings. His loss near Aquileia was significant, not just for the family, but also for the empire's military might. The death weakened their structure, leaving fewer leaders to manage the extensive territories. At the same time, they were facing not only a fragmented empire, but also external threats that pushed from every border.
The impact was severe as the Roman military, once feared across the world, suffered greatly. With the loss of experienced leaders, their ability to respond to threats was compromised. Tribal incursions from Europe and the persistent Persian threats stretched their resources thin. It was a precarious time, with demands far exceeding their diminished capacity. These challenges highlighted the difficulties of maintaining a once vast empire with a weakened force, foreshadowing woes to come.
The military's troubles became evident as victories turned scarce and losses more frequent. Competent leadership was needed, but the internal strife left a void that the empire couldn't fill quickly. As resources dwindled, the strain was massive. The forces that withstood tribal advances now struggled to defend Roman lands. This era marked not just a period of battles, but an overall decline in military readiness. The empire found itself facing multiple urgent threats without the strength that once defined it.
Constant military conflict took its toll, forcing the empire into a defensive stance. This defensive posture was unsustainable due to insufficient numbers and frequent defeats. Meanwhile, unresolved tensions within the empire hinted at further trouble. Looking beyond the horizon, new uprisings brewed internally and external threats loomed larger. This set the stage for more conflicts, laying bare the fragile state of the Roman Empire under its embattled leaders. Their challenges only continued to mount.
We've reached a critical point in our story. The rise of Magnentius adds a new layer of complexity to this already unstable time. Now, who was Magnentius, and why did he aim to overthrow Constans? He was a formidable general, and his ambitions stemmed from dissatisfaction with the current rule. Magnentius sought to capitalize on the discontent brewing among those who felt neglected by the empire's leadership. It's fascinating how one person's ambition can ripple through the whole system.
Magnentius took advantage of the weakness he saw in Constans. He understood that by positioning himself as a strong leader, he could gather support from those dissatisfied with Constans' rule. After Constans' fall, Magnentius faced huge challenges because he was not of the Constantinian bloodline. This outsider status meant he needed to fight for both military and political legitimacy. Initial reforms were on his mind, but military engagement soon consumed his focus.
Magnentius indeed had to secure his position quickly and aim to consolidate his power. However, he faced extraordinary difficulties, especially in getting the wider acceptance he needed. Meanwhile, Constantius, who was ruling the Eastern Empire, viewed Magnentius's rise as a threat that needed immediate action. Constantius was driven less by personal grief over his brother's death and more by the allure of unifying the empire under his sole rule. This set the stage for inevitable conflict.
The confrontation came to a head at the Battle of Mursa Major, a monumental clash with profound impacts on the empire. Constantius brought a massive force against Magnentius, resulting in one of the largest Roman civil battles. Despite winning, the battle took a heavy toll on both sides. The tremendous losses weakened the already strained military resources of the empire, making it even harder to defend against outside invasions. The victory was bittersweet, revealing how costly internal divisions could be.
So, as the empire's troubles continued to mount, Constantius made a surprising decision. He appointed Julian, his cousin, as Caesar to help him manage the empire. Now, when we say Julian was young, he truly was, only 23 years old at the time. But he wasn't just young. He had spent much of his life in academic circles, particularly in Athens, studying philosophy. This intellectual background shaped his approach, bringing fresh perspectives to his new role.
Right, Julian was quite the scholar, which is interesting considering he was now taking on such a significant leadership role. Of course, this same academic experience provided him with unique insights that others might lack. His early years in leadership were marked by both successes and challenges. Despite his academic inclinations, he stepped up to face the pressing issues, especially in the Western Empire. It wasn't just about fighting. He needed to manage political complexities too.
When it comes to his military campaigns, Julian had to prove himself quickly. One of his first major tests was dealing with the Frankish tribes along the Rhine River. He showed a lot of promise by successfully pushing them back. But things weren't without bumps. There was the incident at Verdun, where he and his troops were besieged. This was a tricky situation, and it really put his leadership to the test.
Overcoming the siege at Verdun showcased not just Julian's courage, but also his growing military acumen. He managed to hold his ground and eventually got the needed reinforcements. Julian adapted well under pressure, balancing both warfare and diplomacy proficiently. His rise in this turbulent time reflected his ability to make the most of his education and instinct. His campaigns in Gaul helped strengthen Roman positions, a crucial element for the empire's stability at that point.
It's impressive how efficiently Julian managed to navigate through these early struggles. After the siege, he didn't let his guard down. He continued to secure more territory in Gaul, which not only displayed his military competence, but also earned him the respect of his troops and citizens. While often faced with uncertainty, his consistently strategic actions convinced many of his capabilities, proving that despite his youth and background, he was adapting remarkably well to his new role.
Indeed, Julian's adaptability became a defining feature of his leadership. He was a quick thinker who didn't shy away from confronting adversity head-on. This flexibility allowed him to adjust to various challenges that marked the era. By handling military tactics on the battlefield and engaging politically, Julian began paving the way to reinforce the Roman presence in Europe. Such dedication set the foundation for his continued rise, highlighting his potential to impact the empire significantly.
As we transition from Julian's rise, let's dive into the Battle of Strasburg. This battle was pivotal in securing control over the Rhine. Julian, facing a coalition of Germanic tribes, had his work cut out. His strategy was clever, leveraging both Roman discipline and his troops' resilience. On one hand, the Romans had a streamlined hierarchy and the ability to maintain formation. However, their opponents outnumbered them and held strong positions.
Right. It was a tense setup. Julian's troops, though fewer in number, displayed superior tactical flexibility. He started with a series of feints to confuse the enemy, testing their lines for weaknesses. The Alemanni were prepared, positioning themselves on higher ground for an advantage. Yet Julian's clever use of terrain and calculated risks allowed his forces to counter this. It was a classic display of Roman military tradition meeting practical genius.
Indeed, the use of terrain played a critical role. Julian's decision to deploy his archers creatively helped pressurize the enemy's flanks. Then his heavy cavalry charged at the right moment to break through the weaker spots. The Alemanni did try a surprise counterattack, aiming straight for the Roman center. But Julian had anticipated this and held a reserve force to counterattack, ensuring his lines remained intact.
What was impressive was how Julian adapted when unexpected moves came from the Alemanni leader, Chenodomar. They tried to exploit a break in the Roman lines, but Julian's strategic reserve was instrumental. His ability to stay calm under pressure and make real-time adjustments was remarkable. This flexibility and foresight turned what could have been a disaster into a comprehensive victory for the Romans, reinforcing their dominance in Gaul.
Absolutely. And Julian's victory at Strasburg was significant for the Roman Empire. It not only secured the defensive lines, but also strengthened the morale of his troops. It showed that even though internal strife had weakened Rome, competent leadership could still deliver victory. Julian's actions ensured that the Roman frontiers were stable for the time being, delaying any further advances from hostile forces across the Rhine.
Julian's success was more than just a military victory. It reinstilled confidence in Roman capabilities during a time of unrest. The triumph at Strasburg demonstrated that strategic planning, when executed with precision, could yield incredible results. It marked a turning point, solidifying Julian's reputation as a leader who could handle adversity and safeguard Roman interests effectively. The battle's outcome had far-reaching implications for the security and continuation of Roman territories.
As we conclude our journey through the tempestuous history of the Roman Empire, we see how the cycle of power and conflict has shaped its past. Constantine's vision of a unified dynasty, one underpinned by a shared faith and power, ultimately gave way to internal strife and repeated power struggles. These are lessons about leadership and the fragility of empires, even after reaching apparent stability, as seen with Constantine's once illustrious reign.
Reflecting on these patterns in history, we are reminded of the enduring complexity of human leadership and governance. Are such cycles an inevitable part of history? We invite you to ponder these themes and consider how they echo in today's world. If you've enjoyed this deep dive into Rome's storied past, please like and subscribe, and join us again as we continue exploring the intricate patterns of history. Thank you for listening.